presidential candidate Fernando Haddad has visited Brazil's former president Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva in prison and the Lula Libre camp. There, he warned about the rise of fascism and front-runner candidate Jair Bolsonaro. The Workers' Party candidates say the elite are trying to bring back the far right to the country, but he promised if elected, he will bring back social justice with a fair tax system.
We're going to reform the tax system because the very rich in Brazil don't pay taxes. Those who pay taxes are the poor. The poor need to pay less to start consuming again, to re-stimulate the economy, and we need to compensate this by having the rich pay a bit. The more you stimulate hate, the more fascism will grow, and a substantial part of the Brazilian elite has abandoned social democracy for fascism.
Meanwhile, Lula has sent a public letter to the Brazilian people encouraging them to go to the polls this Sunday. Lula said voters can choose between equality and social justice by voting for Haddad, or inequality and benefits for the wealthy if they elect Bolsonaro. The former president also says the Workers' Party is the only one can guarantee democracy. We examine the presidential candidacy of Fernando Haddad in the upcoming general election in this report.
After the triumph of Dilma Rousseff in the last presidential election 4 years ago, the Workers' Party was attacked by the opposition. Media and elites led to the impeachment, privatizations, austerity policies, and the imprisonment of former President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. The Workers' Party found in Fernando Haddad an option to replace Lula.
Lula was a good president. I vote for him. I will vote for Haddad and for the entire Workers' Party.
I will vote for Haddad because Lula was the only president who worked hard for the northern region.
I will vote for Haddad. He is ahead on the polls and we're going to win.
We are waiting for the general election. Haddad will win. He will receive the presidential sash and everything will go back to normal.
Fernando Haddad is an academic, former mayor of Sao Paulo, and former minister of education. He helped found 18 universities, 173 school campuses, and 360 federal institutes. The Workers' Party also established an education policy to give more opportunities for Black, Barbados, and indigenous people. Among his proposals are the abolition of the labor reform, a reform on social investment and privatization policies imposed by President Michel Temer. Also, a reform of the state system to establish a truth commission to investigate crimes of the dictatorship and the development of a basic food income. If Haddad wins the presidency, he will continue using Petrobras as the main axis of Brazil's economy. This was the same economic strategy used by the previous administrations of the Workers' Party.
Petrobras grew with the price policies that we used to apply. We have taken into account external prices, but in relation to their impact on product costs. However, Michel Temer has transformed Petrobras into a speculative company.
But Haddad needs to convince Lula supporters to vote for him. Lula was leading the polls until his candidacy was revoked by the Electoral Court. However, the new government program developed by Haddad has Lula's support.
It is more advanced than other economic programs presented by the Workers' Party in previous presidential elections. It contains very important structural reforms like the tax reforms and the banking reform. The tax reforms will make those who make more money pay more and those who make less pay less. Brazil has a very aggressive tax structure. More than 60% of taxes are paid by the poorer sectors of the country.
The Workers' Party seeks to win their first presidential election since the impeachment of Dilma Rousseff. The polls anticipate an eventual second round between the extreme right and the Workers' Party.
Bolivia will appeal the ruling of the International Court of Justice regarding their maritime dispute with Chile. President Evo Morales says he will send a letter to the court to highlight contradictions in its decision. The court in The Hague ruled Chile is not forced to negotiate sea access with Bolivia on Monday.
It is not over even if the court has decided it will not accompany our maritime claim. It has accompanied, however, almost every nation in the world in their claims. the multilateral world. We will continue because it is our boisterous demand from the people of Bolivia. Just think about it. I'm not sure the court understands this.
Mexico is paying tribute to the victims of the Tlatelolco massacre. 50 years ago, Mexican troops opened fire on the student demonstrators, killing hundreds. A group of artists staged a memorial to commemorate the victims. They traced the country's silhouette and placed a series of objects that remained when people tried to flee the repression. At the time, the government said around 20 people died, but independent reports said at least 500 people were killed that day.
We are here for the installation of the memorial, a scream of hope and rebellion, which is a tribute to the comrades and fallen comrades of the October 2nd massacre, perpetrated by the genocidal regime of Gustavo Díaz Ordaz.
President-elect Andrés Manuel López Obrador has also paid tribute to the victims and promised he will not repress popular movements. Last week, a government commission recognized the Tlatelolco massacre as a crime of state. Now victims urge authorities for justice to be served.
I pledge my word that I will never order the armed forces, the Navy or the Army, any police corporation to repress the people of Mexico. There is not going to be any authoritarianism.
It was established that what happened here 50 years ago was genocide. However, to date, there is not a single person who committed the genocide in jail. There's not a single person who committed the genocide that has been punished for the killing of the students, of our friends of 1968 in this place.
Our correspondent Pablo Perez has more details from Mexico City.
Well, it's here in the Plaza of Tres Culturas in Tlatelolco, Mexico City, where 50 years ago there was this killing by under the orders of the then President Gustavo Díaz Ordaz that ended with the massacre of over 400 students, member of the Comité 68, the social movement that started in the universities of Mexico City and spread all over the country. Well, historian says that movement 50 years ago was fundamental for the history of social movements here in Mexico, and that repression that forced so many students to go into hiding or to move out of Mexico City is even was part of the roots of some organizations such as the Zapatista Army of National Liberation. Well, 50 years ago there was the massacre, and it was until this year that the Special Victim Commission agreed that it was a state crime. It was a crime against the citizenship by their own government, and the surviving members of the Comité 68 say that it's okay that they agreed that it was a crime, but that they want the criminals to be held responsible for their acts, as there are some surviving members of the government still, and they have not been in trial since the Felipe Calderón government ended the Special Commission for Investigation of the Crimes of the Past.
After over 100 hours of talks between unions and the government of Costa Rica, there's still no solution on how to end the strike.
As negotiations with the government have proven to be unsuccessful, thousands of union members have decided to continue their strike, which has now entered its fourth week.
We haven't agreed on anything. We were working on a document to reach consensus, but in the end, we rejected every proposal by the government.
Despite hours of negotiations, talks broke down as the government continues to progress their economic reforms through the Legislative Assembly. A clear sign that what workers want doesn't matter.
Our position is that the strike will continue. People must continue taking to the streets across the country. We can feel rejection to this economic reform growing.
The proposed economic reform is made up of 4 laws, one of which will replace sales tax with value-added tax, or VAT.
This economic reform hurts the people. It's seriously hurting the prices of basic goods and medicine.
Workers continue to protest and raise awareness. So far, this is the longest strike in the country's recent history.
Politicians fail to understand that they represent the people. They do not serve the rich. They must listen to the majority, to the workers and the vulnerable sectors of society.
Workers are demanding the economic reform be scrapped and replaced with a new one.
We will sit down and talk once the reform is scrapped. It makes no sense to move forward if they continue pushing this reform.
The government and unions want to resolve the situation, but until that happens, the strike will continue.
We'll take a short break now. Join us in a minute. A historic sentence in Chile is forcing a company to return their land to an indigenous community. Forest company Bosques Arauco must restore 97 hectares of land to the Mapuche community of Ignacio Hualipan. According to the judge, the company surpassed the limits of land it had granted. A wildfire that had been raging since Saturday in Ecuador's capital, Quito, was finally put out early Tuesday morning. The fire reportedly burned over 600 hectares of grassland. Over 120 firefighters and a helicopter were deployed to fight the blaze. Authorities are still investigating the cause of the fire, but they would believe they have been caused by local farmers or hunters.
There's
a speculation that rabbit hunters start the fire, trying to smoke out the animals from their burrows. There is a very reckless behavior because we have to understand that the loss of wildlife is irreplaceable.
The public ministry is once again attempting to strip Guatemala's president of his immunity so he can be investigated for alleged illegal campaign financing.
President Jim Morales is alleged to have requested and hid the source of over $1 million in undeclared campaign funding during his 2015 presidential campaign. However, he has denied any wrongdoing.
He received the money knowing where it came from. Investigations show that the money was received by the same person that was registered as candidate and as the general secretary of Morales' party. The president was the secretary of the party at the time. He had to inform the Supreme Electoral Tribunal about this money.
The public ministry has said it has documents, emails, and testimonies of businessmen who admit that they gave Morales the money for his campaign.
With this money, Morales financed propaganda and also the new logo of his party.
The International Commission Against Impunity also asked the authorities to investigate the president. In return, Morales expelled the UN mission from the country. Analysts say this shows Morales is avoiding any action against him.
The president is not the only one involved in this. Many public officials are also linked to this corruption scandal. From the executive power, congressmen, and even some military men. They're also protecting themselves.
People have protested against President Morales, demanding his resignation. They want him to go to trial.
The G20's Gender Equality Summit, known as W20, has kicked off in Argentina. Its main focus is women's empowerment and how to get more female representation in institutions across the globe. From Tuesday, 65 delegates will discuss these and other issues related to women for 3 days. After a 36-hour national strike, public sector workers in Argentina have now set up camp outside Parliament to protest against the proposed budget for 2019.
The economic situation in Argentina is hitting state employees more and more. They are one of the groups most affected, with hundreds of layoffs. To express their rejection, they are protesting in front of the parliament against the proposed budget law, which will be under debate in the coming days.
It is the same fear people felt in the 90s, in 2001, and now again in 2018. It is a budget set by the International Monetary Fund with insane infernal cuts that all us Argentinian workers are going to pay for.
This year we only have a 6% pay rise, while it's estimated that inflation will be more than 54% by the end of 2018.
Mauricio Macri is not interested in workers. He's only interested in the companies, and those companies want to control the state.
They have set up camp against the IMF budget with the slogan, "For work, production, and sovereignty." These public sector workers are beginning a new phase of their struggle against the government and its agreement with the International Monetary Fund. They say the government has closed the door on talks and wants to confront the trade unions.
The payment of the foreign debt and the interest has increased. This proposed budget includes 25% devoted entirely to servicing the debt created by Mauricio Macri's government.
Union leaders have presented a report with their main criticisms of the budget bill sent to Congress by the government. They say the government treats public sector layoffs as just another variable in its austerity plans.
They are not going to touch their friends' pockets. Instead, they touch the pockets of workers and pensioners. A new reform is on the way of these benefits that have existed for decades. They want to wipe out our history and the welfare of the Argentinian people.
This occupation and protest by state workers comes as new increases in the prices of fuel and services are introduced. It's set to continue all week with debates, teach-ins, artistic shows, and the presentation of a document which criticizes the agreement with the International Monetary Fund.
Chile's Catholic Church has retired a controversial manual giving advice to priests on how to behave with children. The text was aimed at preventing more cases of sexual abuses in the church. It talked about inappropriate behaviors such as kissing in the mouth, slapping the butt, or touching the genitals of children. The Archbishop of Santiago has apologized. Social and political movements in Caracas have organized a demonstration in support of Palestine and to reject international intervention in Venezuela. Our correspondent has the story.
Plaza Bolívar in Caracas was the stage where Palestinians and Venezuelans gathered to reject the actions against the sovereignty of Venezuela promoted by the White House and its allies.
The Palestinian struggle has always been supported by Latin America, especially by Venezuela. We have shown our support for the people's fight against the world's aggressors.
Venezuela has maintained its support for the Palestinian people. The union of both nations was celebrated by young Palestinians that live in the South American nation.
We thank Venezuelans and President Nicolás Maduro for opening their doors. This is now our second country.
They say Venezuela is their second motherland. Hamse is one of the more than 1,000 young students who received a scholarship from the government to study medicine. He highlighted youth must defend itself from the international right wing.
As medicine students, we can provide healthcare where it still doesn't exist, to the poor countries. Education is a right for everyone. We, as Palestinians in Venezuela, are able to defend our rights and our country. We can protest the aggressions against our country.
They also thank the support of many governments at the 33rd United Nations General Assembly. Despite the situation, they continue to express joy and pride for their culture.
The IMF has approved a $290 million extended fund facility for Barbados. The 4-year arrangement will allow for an immediate payment of about $49 million. The rest of the funds will only be released after the successful completion of 7 semi-annual reviews. The new government inherited a debt of more than $77 billion. Meanwhile, St Lucia aims to improve its health coverage with a World Bank loan. The bank has approved a $20 million credit for an international development association. The project seeks to ensure that people on the island are registered to the national health system. It also ensures that at least 60% of diabetic and hypertensive patients over 18 are treated according to national rules.
Medical procedures that we can offer here in St Lucia.
In Trinidad and Tobago, Finance Minister Colm Imbert has rolled out a $7 billion national budget. With immediate effect, the cost of super gasoline will increase by $1 per liter. Imbert also announced an increase on public servants' pensions. The budget comes as a state-owned oil company, Petrotrin, closes its refinery. The 2018 World Salsa Festival has ended in Cali, Colombia. Over 3,000 dancers participated in this event. This year, the festival was marked by a high level of innovative dance styles. The international juries were impressed with how the dancers risked everything on stage and didn't hesitate to try new dance styles. Over 1,000 children also competed in the contest. We'll take a short break now. World News is next.
We are present at every event where our nations are staring. We believe in a new global vision, united in every broadcasting. We keep expanding our horizons and working on a closer and better communication. Now, in Grenada, Telesur, the news source from South America and the Caribbean.
Welcome back. Members of parliament in Iraq have appointed Kurdish politician Barham Salem as the country's president. Salem has appointed Abdel Abdel-Mahdi as his prime minister. The new president has made a call for unity and says he's committed to Iraq's independence. A suicide attack on a political rally in eastern Afghanistan has killed at least 13 people and wounded more than 40. A militant blew himself up amongst supporters of candidate Abdul Nasir Mohammed. The attack is the first suicide assault since campaigning officially began last Friday for the long-delayed ballot. Preparations have already been marred by dozens of bloody attacks. Guinea is celebrating its 60th anniversary of independence. Thousands of people have gathered in the main stadium at the capital Conakry to pay tribute to the martyrs that fought for independence. The place was decorated with flowers with the national colors and portraits of Pan-Africanism figures. Guinea was the first sub-Saharan country to obtain independence from France. Controversy has spread in Italy after the arrest of a pro-refugee mayor. He has been arrested on charges of aiding illegal immigration. Hundreds of people have protested in capital Rome to support the mayor of the southern village of Riace. His supporters say the Italian government wants to target a champion for the integration of migrants. We come to the end of this news brief. These and many other stories you can find on our website at telesurtv.net/English. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Jose Daniel Lopez. Thank you for watching.